If you're about to read this, do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's a wildfire of greed, revenge, and irony so thick you could land a Boeing 747 on it, which is fitting because that's exactly what my HOA tried to do on my farm, not knowing that I, the quiet man they thought was just a harmless old farmer with dirt under his nails, am in fact the sitting director of the Federal Aviation Administration, the one man in the entire country who can decide where runways are legal, where air traffic flows, and who controls the skies. And when you combine that authority with a stubborn streak and a memory longer than the horizon, you get the kind of showdown that no neighborhood committee meeting could ever hope to contain. It started innocently enough when I bought this farm 20 years ago, a spread of rolling fields, orchards, and barns that became my refuge from the storm of Washington politics, a place where I could breathe, raise my kids, and maybe one day retire. But then the local Homeowners Association grew teeth, led by a man named Gregory Finch, a smug, red-faced real estate developer who thought money gave him wings, and he hatched the most insane scheme I'd ever heard. He wanted to turn our quiet rural neighborhood into the first residential airpark of the state, meaning every homeowner would be allowed a hangar in their backyard, small planes buzzing in and out like mosquitoes, and the crown jewel would be a privately funded runway carved straight through my farmland, bulldozing my orchards and splitting my pastures in half, a decision they made without asking me, without caring, because in their eyes, I was just a cranky farmer too stubborn to sell, so they voted in secret, drew up blueprints, and one morning I woke to the roar of machinery as bulldozers rolled onto my land, tearing up soil I'd tended for decades, and that was the moment they made their biggest mistake, because they thought they could push me, not realizing that I knew the skies better than they knew their own yards, that I had every FAA regulation burned into my brain, every loophole, every weapon hidden in legalese, and while they were celebrating with champagne and cheap cigars at the HOA clubhouse, I was drafting paperwork that would make their little runway not just illegal but radioactive in the eyes of federal law. But I didn't stop there, oh no, because revenge is sweetest when it takes off slowly, gains altitude, and then comes crashing down in flames. So instead of shutting them down immediately, I let the project grow, let them pour millions into paving, marking, and even constructing little hangars, let them invite investors and promise them a slice of the future of aviation living, while all the while I was documenting every violation, every unpermitted grading, every endangered bird habitat they destroyed, every time they tried to cut corners, until I had a dossier thick enough to ground the entire project before its maiden flight. But life loves its plot twists, and just when I thought I had them cornered, Gregory came to me with a smile, acting like we were old friends, and offered me a generous buyout, waving a check that could have paid off every mortgage in the county, and I looked him dead in the eye and told him that not only would I never sell but that his runway would never see a single legal takeoff, and that's when the war truly began, because suddenly I wasn't just dealing with greedy neighbors, I was up against bribes, threats, late-night phone calls, even a mysterious fire that nearly burned down my barn, and yet I kept my cool, playing the long game, attending every HOA meeting with the calm of a man holding nuclear codes in his back pocket, nodding along as they boasted about their airpark lifestyle, while I secretly filed injunctions, called in inspectors, and delayed permits until their investors grew restless. But the most delicious twist came when Gregory finally managed to get a plane onto that illegal strip for a demonstration day. A flashy Cessna flown in from out of state, with a crowd of homeowners cheering, and just as the pilot revved up for takeoff, a fleet of black SUVs pulled onto the grass, federal marshals stepping out with clipboards and cameras, shutting everything down on my command, because what nobody knew until that moment was that I had personally signed the order declaring the runway a hazard to national airspace, citing everything from its proximity to migratory bird paths to its interference with a military training corridor. And in that single moment their dream turned into ash. But the story didn't end there, because Gregory, cornered and desperate, tried to sue me personally, dragging me into court where his lawyers painted me as a tyrant abusing my power. But courtrooms are battlefields too, and I walked in armed with not just documents but witnesses, pilots, environmental experts, even a recording of Gregory bragging about how he'd greased a few palms to speed up construction, and by the time my testimony was finished, the judge was glaring at him like he'd just confessed to hijacking a plane, and the lawsuit crumbled, leaving him bankrupt, his HOA fractured, his dream runway a strip of cracked asphalt now home to weeds and rabbits, while my farm stood untouched, stronger than ever, and neighbors who once sneered at me now brought pies and apologies. But here's the real kicker, the twist that still makes me laugh whenever I look at the field where their runway used to be. After the dust settled, after Gregory slunk away in disgrace, I had the FAA officially convert the land back into protected agricultural airspace, meaning no future project could ever touch it, essentially giving me the ultimate shield, and if I ever wanted to, I could even land my own small plane there legally, not because of the HOA but because I signed off on it. So in the end, the lesson is simple. Never try to take the skies from a man who owns them. Never build a runway through his farm unless you're ready for the turbulence of your life. And if you think this story is wild, just imagine the others I've got locked away from decades in aviation and politics. So do yourself a favor, hit subscribe right now, because the next story might just take you higher than this one. And trust me, you don't want to miss the landing.